Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today on the territory of Nanaimo First Nations people. I'm Sheila Malcolmson. I'm Nanaimo's member of the legislature. I'm also the Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. I'm also joined here today by my colleagues, the North Nanaimo MLA Adam Walker, and for South Nanaimo, Doug Routley. We are here at the Nanaimo Courthouse to outline how our government is investing in public safety to build safer, stronger communities. Here you will hear from Premier David Eby, Mike Farnworth, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, Niki Sharma, the Attorney General, Leonard Krog, Mayor of Nanaimo, and Superintendent Ray Carfantan, who's the District Commander of the Police RCMP for all of Vancouver Island. I'm honored to represent this beautiful community, the gorgeous, vibrant city of Nanaimo, where so many of you call home. But I'm disturbed by the upswell in recent violent offending that we've been witnessing. I've listened to families who feel street disorder is making their neighborhoods unsafe. I've met with businesses whose livelihood is threatened by break-ins and thefts. The frustration that we're seeing and feeling in Nanaimo is echoed across the province and across Canada. But we want Nanaimo residents to know, and all British Columbians, that we hear and we share your concern. So we are taking decisive, concrete action to deal with this really complicated problem. Premier Eby leads this work, and we will hear first from him today. Thank you.
Hey, Sheila. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll begin by acknowledging we're on the territory of the Coast Salish people, the Nanaimo First Nation, and it's great to be here. A beautiful sunny day in Nanaimo. Thank you for joining us. I want to start off just with the disturbing news out of Surrey of a 17-year-old and a targeted attack on transit there who has passed away from stabbing. Horrific news out of Surrey. And absolutely part of why we're here today. Our commitment to address the issue of public safety on transit in communities across the province. I agree with many of the folks who I've talked with today from City Council, from businesses and others about the urgency of the issue we've faced. Now, I don't have to tell people how beautiful Nanaimo is, especially on a day like today, but I also don't have to tell people who live here about the challenges that the city has been facing. This morning, I had a chance to meet with a constable and a nurse who are part of the CAR 54 program here in Nanaimo and heard about the challenges firsthand in this community. I met with business owners downtown, hearing about the challenges of mental health and addiction and homelessness impacting downtown Nanaimo, and concern about public safety and the fate of downtown Nanaimo. I heard that people don't feel safe walking around their neighborhoods. And it's not just here in Nanaimo, it's in other parts of the province as well. I also heard that too many people don't have a safe place to live or access to mental health and addiction support. So we need strong action now, not just here in Nanaimo, but across the province. I know this isn't what people want for their community here in Nanaimo, and it's certainly not what our government sees for the future of Nanaimo. We're here in part because of a decade of cuts to services, and a generation of underinvestment in housing and healthcare. We're also facing the impacts of a toxic drug supply here in Nanaimo that hurts and brain injures as many people or more than it kills. We're here because of changes to federal rules around bail that made it too hard to keep people in custody waiting for trial, responding to violent offending. For these reasons and others, we're seeing impacts here in Nanaimo around the province. This uptick in repeat violent offending that we're seeing is unnerving for many and is completely unacceptable. We're fighting back with new steps to drive positive change in communities around British Columbia. We're strengthening enforcement to make sure there are serious consequences for those who break the law and to target the small but serious number of people causing the most chaos, while also making sure services are available to those who need them and who are ready to access them. I'm standing in front of what will be the home for a new regional hub in Nanaimo, home to a team of dedicated police, prosecutors, and probation officers. They'll work together to monitor cases involving prolific offenders from investigation through the court process to strict community supervision. This is one of 12 regional hubs across the province that will be stood up and will start work at the beginning of next month, from Surrey to Cranbrook, Kamloops to Prince George, and up to Terrace. The focus will be on driving down repeat violent offending in every region of British Columbia. To everyone listening today, the message is this: if you break the law, there will be serious consequences. If you need support to break the cycle of offending, it will be available to you. That's why we're also making record investments, over $1 billion in this year's budget, in mental health and addiction services. Because sometimes the health response is needed too, not just a criminal justice one. These regional hubs are just one measure in our Safer Communities Action Plan. In addition, a new specialized investigation and targeted enforcement program, also known as SITE, will be rolling out soon. SITE will boost resources to help police with investigations and targeted enforcement of repeat violent offenders. It will also make police collaboration across communities and jurisdictions more efficient. Minister Farnworth will have more to say about this shortly. These are the latest steps we're taking to build safer communities, and there's even more to come, including 250 additional RCMP officers to keep people safe, especially in rural BC and on dedicated enforcement teams. And just last week, we brought in a new law to crack down on unexplained wealth earned through organized crime or corruption. Here in Nanaimo, we're celebrating our victory in the Court of Appeal and seizing the Hells Angels Clubhouse, but we know there's much more to do. These actions will help us fight the criminal activity that fuels the toxic drug crisis and the violence on our streets. We're going to keep calling on our partners to continue this work with us: First Nations leadership, local governments, professionals in our healthcare and justice system, community organizations, and peer support workers. To that end, I'm very pleased that today we agreed with Nanaimo City Council to further our work to integrate our efforts to address public safety here in Nanaimo at the municipal and the provincial level. By working together, we can build a province where a good life is in reach for everyone, where you have a decent home in a safe and caring neighborhood, where you have access to a family doctor and can count on top-notch health and mental health care, where you have a good family supporting job wherever you choose to put down roots. This is what everyone deserves here in Nanaimo and across British Columbia, and we'll get there together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier Eby. I now invite British Columbia's Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety, Mike Farnworth.
Thank you, Minister Malcolmson, and I want to thank everyone who's joined us here today. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we are here on the territory of the Coast Salish peoples, traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nation. I also want to take the opportunity to recognize Superintendent Ray Carfantan and all the police officers who are joining us here today. I want to thank them for all the work they do to keep us safe here in Nanaimo and in communities throughout British Columbia. The increase in repeat violent offending is top of mind for British Columbians, and it's also a top priority for our government. Every day, police see the results of these crimes. Repeatedly, police have demonstrated persistence, compassion, and professionalism, interacting with people who commit these senseless acts and the victims that are left in their wake. We ask a lot of our police, and they have a very difficult job. With today's announcements, we're providing them with more tools that they need to be able to do their work. That means working with the city. And that's why we're going to invest $75,000 to support existing initiatives tailored to Nanaimo's specific safety needs, such as the Downtown Nanaimo Community Safety Action Plan and the situation tables that are in place. This funding will help address safety concerns, including repeat violent offending, through a collaborative approach. That encourages service providers to partner together, pooling resources and expertise. The Downtown Nanaimo Community Safety Action Plan and the Situation Table aligns with the Repeat Violent Offender Initiative, which government, my colleague, the Attorney General, will be talking about shortly. One of its hubs of dedicated police, prosecutors, and probation officers will operate here in Nanaimo. But we're also recognizing more needs to be done in terms of assisting police. That's why our government is pleased to commit to special funding of $16 million over the next 3 years for the Special Investigation and Targeted Enforcement or SITE program. With this additional funding, police across the province will have more resources for targeted investigations of repeat violent offenders and incidents linked to weapons offenses and stranger attacks. The Nanaimo RCMP detachment will have access to this funding in the years ahead to customize additional resources that will have the greatest impact in this community. All of these measures support our Safer Communities Action Plan. Another key plank of the action plan is our unprecedented investment in base RCMP funding to hire more police officers. As well, unexplained wealth orders will help target the illicit assets of criminals who profit off the deadly toxic drug supply. And an underlying cause of repeat violent offending, we will continue to press Ottawa for changes to federal laws that communities across Canada need. We've already had a commitment that the federal government intends to do that this legislative session in Ottawa. I know we can continue to count on our law enforcement partners to disrupt and prevent repeat and violent offending. And I want Nanaimo and other communities to know that they can continue to count on our government's support as we work to build safer, healthier communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Farnworth. Our next speaker is Attorney General Niki Sharma.
Thanks, Minister Malcolmson. It's so great to be here in this beautiful city. I'd like to also acknowledge that we're on the territory of the Nanaimo First Nation. As the Premier mentioned, we rode along in Car 54 this morning to learn firsthand about the compounding challenges Nanaimo is facing. Crime, homelessness, and mental health challenges are impacting people's feeling of safety here in Nanaimo and in communities across BC. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their communities, but random violent attacks corrode people's sense of safety and sense of community. I want people in Nanaimo and across the province to know that we hear you and we're taking action. Today we're announcing we're standing up the Repeat Violent Offending Intervention Initiative in 12 communities across the province, including right here in Nanaimo. It will be set up in Victoria, Vancouver, Surrey, New West, Abbotsford, Kamloops, Kelowna, Cranbrook, Prince George, Williams Lake, and Terrace. These community hubs will include dedicated support from the BC Prosecution Service. Dedicated Crown Counsel teams will provide criminal law advice and independent prosecutorial support and services for the hubs and help build safer, more just communities. This includes dedicated probation officers along with targeted enforcement and enhanced investigation and monitoring of individuals. The Repeat Violent Offending Intervention Initiative also intends to focus on helping individuals through enhanced community supervision, case management, and release planning for those transitioning from the community, from custody to the community. The BC Prosecution Service recently announced that members for the regional prosecution teams have already been identified. These teams are now receiving training and will be ready to start their new roles on May 1st. But you know, like I know, repeat offending is a problem right across this country. Linked to recent changes in the Federal Criminal Code and subsequent Supreme Court decisions, that's why last month we traveled to Ottawa to meet our federal, provincial, and territorial counterparts for an emergency meeting about bail reform. At the meeting, and as a result of our advocacy, the federal government made a clear commitment, a commitment to do their part. We've made important progress by listening to people and working together across all levels of government. And I know that there's more work ahead to address these complex challenges that communities across BC and the country are facing, so that we can build a more just and equitable province where everyone has a chance to make a good life for themselves and their family, and everyone can feel safe in their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. I now invite my friend, Mayor Leonard Krog, to the podium.
Thank you very much, Minister Malcolmson. I too want to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. I want to welcome all of you who've come from out of town to cover this event today. I always appreciate coverage for the great city of Nanaimo. I also want to pay my respects to the robust democracy that exists here constantly when we hear from so many people with differing views in public places, and we should be grateful for that, right? I particularly want to thank the Premier and Minister Farnworth who've come today, Minister Sharma, our Attorney General, for taking the time to meet with Nanaimo City Council today, and to thank them for the announcement they have made. Let's be candid about this. We face in our streets across this province the results of 30 and 40 years of failed social and health policy. We have deferred a number of people into our court system who should be in our healthcare system, and we've probably deferred some people into our healthcare system who should be in our court system. But as this government grapples with that, it recognizes here today by its announcements the need to enhance and ensure public safety today, while at the same time working on the root causes and the misery that exists. Oh, thank God, I was almost offended. I wasn't heckle-worthy. Most insulting thing for a politician, don't you know? As they try and deal with all of the challenges that so many people in our streets face, we should be grateful for that recognition, and we should recognize the importance of being members of a community that will work together. And I heard a commitment this morning from the Premier, which I gratefully accept on behalf of the city, that his government will work with the city of Nanaimo to ensure not only that our streets are safe, but that our citizens are healthy and protected and cared for. As I have reminded everybody, the people who are living in our streets, the people who are suffering, are someone's sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and grandchildren. And none of us can live in a happy, healthy community while people continue to suffer in our streets and, in their worst behaviors, commit criminal acts that disturb and frighten all of us. So as we move forward together, again, I want to thank the government for its announcements today. I look forward to working with the government to ensure that we build safer and better communities, which we all want to live in, and where robust democracy will continue to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Krog. Our final speaker now is Superintendent Carfantan. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Premier, ministers, honored guests, and the voices of the community that are here today. I appreciate the invitation today and your commitment to addressing the issue that we have of repeat violent offenders that has impacted many in our communities across BC. The RCMP continues to support initiatives that bring agencies together, enhances information sharing, and expands upon the options available when dealing with repeat violent offenders. Both the Repeat Violent Offending Intervention Initiative and the Special Investigations and Target Enforcement Program are intended to do exactly that. As a provincial police force and a police service that lives and works both in rural and remote communities as well as large urban centers, we know that repeat offenders impact police services, often disproportionately taking more of our time and resources than some of the other matters we deal with day to day. We welcome the establishment of the dedicated hubs, including the one here in Nanaimo, and we stand ready to join our justice system colleagues, specifically prosecutors and corrections, to identify the local or regional services that are available to address the underlying factors contributing to repeat violent offenses. Bringing the right people together to look at options is also a cornerstone to the Special Investigation and Targeted Enforcement Program, or SITE. We have seen the benefits firsthand from similar coordinated approaches, such as a Provincial Tactical Enforcement Priority, or PTEP, and the Mobilization and Resiliency Tables. The principles are the same: multiple individuals working together to mitigate risks, prioritize and coordinate, and even establish the best way to intervene or conduct targeted enforcement initiatives. We also like that the program allows for local and regional input and flexibility to establish local options. SITE will be a great way to use our existing resources more efficiently as we enhance our ability to coordinate between police agencies as well as law enforcement, justice partners, and the community. Thank you so very much for the investment, and we welcome these additional tools. Thank you.
Superintendent Ray Carfantan, thank you for your words and for your service, and to everybody working on the front line in every way and every capacity in Nanaimo. We're grateful for you. So in conclusion, it's clear that violent repeat offending is causing significant damage and pain in Nanaimo and in many parts of British Columbia. There's a lot of work in front of us, but we're taking more steps together today by working with our law enforcement partners, by connecting people with supports that help end the cycle of reoffending. We're investing in a British Columbia where we all feel secure, the most vulnerable, everybody, but we all feel secure wherever we live. We want a place where families feel safe on our streets, where businesses safely operate and flourish. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. Thank you for your attention. We'll now take questions.
Thanks for joining us today. We have reporters here on the ground as well as some reporters on the line. For those on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. All reporters will be limited to one question and one follow-up. We're going to start on the ground today with Richard Zussman from Global News. Go ahead, Richard.
Premier, you come here to what has in essence become ground zero for this crisis combining mental health and crime, and you announce hubs that are going to take a long time to establish themselves. What can you do in the immediacy that would help address the concerns that all of these people are feeling? And to the mayor, are you confident that there are any short-term people are feeling right now?
Yeah, it's not correct, Richard, that this will take a long time to establish. This hub will start working at the beginning of next month. Hiring is complete at the prosecution service of the additional prosecutors. They're in training right now. Staff have been identified at corrections. They're also going through their training, and they'll begin work here at the beginning of next month. The urgency of the actions we're taking on mental health and addiction also involve direct funding to groups to expand beds and services that are available right now, to support the establishment of peer interventions for people struggling with mental health, but also CAR programs like the program here in Nanaimo. So British Columbians will start to see these programs rolling out as soon as the beginning of next month, and expansion of the successful pilots that we've seen in place already. There is a lot to do, and we're not going to solve these problems overnight, but we are going to show progress for British Columbians, the direction that we're going. And the only way that we're going to get there is together, which is why I'm so grateful that we were able to meet with Nanaimo City Council and reach agreement between ourselves to commit to working together going forward to customize and ensure that the responses for Nanaimo will work for Nanaimo with the services and needs that are here in the community.
Thank you very much for the question. Look, in the short term, nothing's going to happen overnight. As I said earlier, we took 30, 40 years to get to where we are. Having said that, the extra supports for the police, the prosecution services are crucial. We all know that across this province, in every community, there are a number of individuals who are significant repeat offenders who consume a great deal of police resources, taking time from all kinds of other policing activities that are important. So I think as far as a short-term solution goes, it's going to be helpful. Is it perfect? No. But you know what? It's a very good start.
Do you have a follow-up, Richard?
Premier, on Crab Park in Vancouver, has there been any conversations with the city there about when that encampment will be coming down? And by the end of today, your opponent, Kevin Falcon, will now be the leader of BC United. What do you make of the new name?
So for the issue of Crab Park and the downtown east side of the encampments there and in other parts of the province, including here in Nanaimo, we have additional resources in the budget to support cities in responding to encampments, to respond to the fact that encampments are not suitable housing. They're not safe for the people that are in the encampments. They're not safe for the broader community. We're working closely with the City of Vancouver, along with cities like the City of Nanaimo, to open up the housing to respond to those encampments. For Crab Park specifically, there's an injunction in place that needs to be addressed by the city. We're working with the city to make sure that we decamp that site, get people into housing safely and out of the park. There's more work to do there, as well as our longer range work on the downtown east side to address the structural issues in that community to make it a safe, low-income community, a healthy low-income community, safe for seniors and families. For the priorities of the BC Liberals, their priority right now is to change their name. I definitely understand why. I don't think it will change their legacy in this province. For us, we're focused on housing, public safety, making sure that healthcare is there for people, and that we have a strong economy that works for everybody.
Our next question will come from Claire Palmer from CBC News. Go ahead, Claire.
Hi, I guess this is for the Premier or anyone else who can answer it, but how was repeat offenders identified as a priority to address public safety in these communities?
One of the key pieces of work, certainly that I've been engaged in, that the Minister for Public Safety, the Attorney General have been engaged in at the government level, is hearing from people who work on the front lines, from police officers, from people in nonprofit organizations, from city councils, from people in community. And what we're hearing is that there is an overall and serious issue with mental health and addiction that we need to address. That's why we have $1 billion in the budget to go after that issue aggressively. But we're also hearing that there's a small number of people that are creating a disproportionate amount of chaos in communities. And this is people struggling with brain injuries from repeated overdose, for example, very serious mental health issues, and just prolific criminal offending, including violent offending. And it seems to us that we can coordinate resources and dedicate resources to address that very specific issue and make a really big difference in community by coordinating and focusing on this group that's having a very outsized impact. We've heard this from police, we've heard this from city councils, we've heard this from community members. And so that is the focus on prolific repeat offenders, and especially those who engage in violence in community. And we're going to continue that work. I don't know any insight about Nanaimo in terms of...
Oh, thank you very much for the question. And, identifying problems and coming up with solutions is what we do day to day, and the opportunity for us to have a voice on behalf of people that struggle day to day, whether that be from mental health addictions or other concerns. We try and do the best that we can with those in the front end, and we just really very much appreciate the opportunity for people to think about new ways to address the same problem so we can achieve a better solution if we can. So thank you for your question.
Claire, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, and so is there anything in the works for what's next post this program here to address those other causes?
Specifically in Nanaimo, the commitment from City Council, from the Mayor, from me, and from my counterparts, elected officials locally here in Nanaimo and key cabinet ministers, is that we're going to work together on developing an enhanced and up-to-date agreement between us about how we're going to integrate the work that the city's doing, the work that the city is also willing to do around identifying sites, purchasing sites, the work that the province is doing and the resources we're bringing to the table around policing, around the justice system, around mental health and addiction, so that we're working together in a really integrated way for Nanaimo. Here in Nanaimo, starting at the beginning of next month is when the hub will start up here in Nanaimo with the dedicated prosecutors, probation officers, and corrections officials. We have a significant amount of work to do across the province, and we'll be rolling out these programs as we go forward.
Our next question comes from Carl Yu from the Nanaimo News Bulletin. Go ahead, Carl.
Just a question. I'm just wondering, there was an announcement earlier this year about, hiring more Crown prosecutors and that sort of thing. Any numbers on how many new prosecutors for Nanaimo so far?
So there are 40 prosecutors that have been hired to bolster the ranks of the prosecution service. And those prosecutors are going into 12 teams across the province, supported by corrections workers and probation officers. They'll be working out of here in Nanaimo and 11 different sites in addition to Nanaimo across the province. and they will be additional resources to the existing prosecution team here in Nanaimo.
Do you have a follow-up, Carl? Our next question will come from Carla Wilson from the Times columnist. Go ahead, Carla.
Premier Eby, I'm wondering, with your focus on repeat violent offenders, if there's been any new thoughts on involuntary care.
As part of our $1 billion announcement in the budget around mental health and addiction supports, there are resources dedicated for expansion of the Redfish model of care that has been established at the Riverview site. This is an involuntary care site where people with serious mental health and addiction issues get the care that they need. But it does not respond to the level of demand for this kind of service that there is in our province. So we'll be building on that model, looking at expanding it regionally so that people can access services across the province in their communities. And in addition, we have been doing work on involuntary care in terms of making sure that it's easier for police so that they aren't waiting at the hospital for somebody to be assessed, giving police tools so that information can be shared with the hospital in advance, expanding CAR programs so that police are with a health professional that has expertise in this area so that it will facilitate admission if somebody needs that. Petitioners to sign off on paperwork to people involuntarily to hospital to reduce demands on physicians that are needed in other parts of emergency care. But we're also dramatically increasing the voluntary care available in this province. There are lots of people who want to get into treatment and they want to start rebuilding their lives. And so we have a new model of care and development with Providence Healthcare, where connected to the emergency room is detox and treatment right in the hospital at St. Paul's. And then from treatment into support in the community through a recovery center, where they'll connect with workplace skills, with housing, and with a recovery community, people living in recovery from addiction. It's going to take a holistic approach, going at this from many different angles to address this issue. No one solution is going to address it, but it is certainly apparent here in Nanaimo and across the province that dramatic expansion of mental health and addiction services is needed, and that's what our government is doing.
Do you have a follow-up, Carla?
You were just mentioning the province working with the municipalities and others involved with some of these really chronic issues. Is there an existing structure? I just want to clarify that I understand that you're going to be working with an existing Nanaimo organization or setup, or is something new going to be?
So the city of Nanaimo, the city of Nanaimo has an existing public safety strategy for their community. They have an existing framework to coordinate their municipal efforts and our provincial efforts. We are committing an additional $75,000 to that Nanaimo effort so that we can coordinate more. So we're adding into the infrastructure that the city of Nanaimo has already built. And beyond that, we have a memorandum of understanding, it's dated now, around housing. We're going to need to update that, and not just in relation to housing, in terms of how we're going to work together on everything from the Indigenous Justice Center that'll be here in Nanaimo, from the mental health and addiction services, definitely the housing services, as well as the justice services, so that we're all working in an integrated way. We're very grateful for the work that Nanaimo has done to build those frameworks to the extent that their municipal authority allows. But it's clear to me that the city of Nanaimo needs the province to be here with our provincial authorities and resources as well, and that we all have to work together in an integrated way, and that will be our focus going forward. How do we support what Nanaimo has been doing and expand that work?
Our next question comes from Gord Kurbis from CTV News. Go ahead, Gord.
I'm sure the inspector will verify the fact that you probably already knew who the repeat offenders were in the area, and this new organization will be kind of just be reinforcing who those people were. Unless the courts change and become stronger at keeping people in, what will actually be the benefit of this? You can arrest them, identify them, arrest them, but unless the courts are actually going to do something stronger, what's going to happen?
A great question. So there are a number of different approaches we've taken at the provincial level within our authority, but we also need the federal government to be at the table as well. So in terms of the courts themselves and what difference this team is going to make, it's going to make sure that when somebody is arrested in community and they're appearing in court, that the full body of the person's background, of all of their recent activities, is in front of the court. One of the challenges we've been running into is somebody gets arrested overnight, they get brought in, the prosecutor doesn't have access for whatever reason to all of the information about what's been happening in the community. There will be flags on individual files so that the prosecution team will know this is one of the dedicated files. It will go to this team that will have the full history so that the prosecution team can know this is an identified individual that is committing multiple offenses and that deserves additional attention, so that the full record is in front of the court, so the judge has the full record to make the decision. But we also need the federal government to fix the bail laws. There were changes made to the federal bail laws that made it harder, combined with a couple of Supreme Court decisions, to keep repeat violent offenders in custody when they're waiting for trial. The Minister for Public Safety and the Attorney General went to Ottawa and got a commitment from the federal government that this session they are going to address that issue. In particular, that the federal government is going to put, when someone is committing repeated offenses involving violence, it's called a reverse onus, they're going to have to prove why it is they should be released, as opposed to the opposite, where the prosecutor has to prove why they need to be kept in custody. And also that the court pays attention to the fact that we're all concerned about what's happening. And then finally, a lot of these repeat offenders have very serious health, addiction, mental health issues. A dedicated team creates the possibility for a tailored order that requires that individual to participate in certain treatment programs in order to break that cycle, connects them to services as part of the conditions of arrest, and makes it possible to break that cycle. So for all those reasons, these teams will be effective, but they aren't the full solution. We need the federal government there as well.
Do you have a follow-up, Gordon?
And a question on behalf of a member of the audience who's here, a member of the public, is why did it take so long to get to this point of installing this now? They want to make sure it's not just a pre-election thing. They want to know why it took so long to get to this point.
Sure. So I think that when we look at where we were at with overdoses and addiction and mental health pre-pandemic and where we are post-pandemic, there's a pretty marked change that people are seeing in community. There was a prolific offender program in British Columbia in 2012. That program was discontinued by the government and when it was never restarted. But a combination of changes of the impacts of the pandemic, the changes to the federal bail rules, the decisions from the Supreme Court of Canada, and people surviving overdose but living with a serious brain injury that's affecting their judgment and community in ways that are concerning and cause a lot of apprehension about public safety. All of these factors we're seeing play out very dramatically here in British Columbia, but also across the country. So there's a desperate need for this type of intervention that looks at all of the pieces, the health issue, the very specific needs of the individual, and intercepts and interrupts that activity that's making communities less safe. We think it will be successful, but we will need the cooperation and support of other levels of government, which we have here in Nanaimo, and we're looking to the federal government as well.
We've got time for one more question from the media, so we're going to go to the phone lines with Mike Hager from Globe and Mail. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks for taking my questions. The dozen cities that are announced today, just looking at a couple of them, Mounties there have average caseloads more than double kind of an acceptable amount. Prince George, according to the latest report, has average caseloads of 120 cases a year. Kamloops and Kelowna average just over 90. So these are meant to be hubs that serve the communities outside the dozen announced today. But realistically, how the heck can these teams do any work outside of these communities when there are so many cases within the boundaries of the cities they're located?
Yeah, we've announced funding for more than 200 additional RCMP officers to support both smaller communities as well as integrated teams that provide support across the province. The big challenge we have is that we're not seeing even the replacement number of officers we need to support deployment levels in cities like Nanaimo here. We need a dramatic increase of the number of officers being trained and being deployed to British Columbia. We have the funding. We have the support for the officers in place. We need the physical police officers. It's been a big push from the public safety minister. It's been a big push from me. with our federal counterparts about the critical importance of ensuring we have adequately staffed police services that our province is funding. And it's also a very live part of the conversation about policing in the province generally. Certainly we see that discussion in the city of Surrey. It was part of the discussion of the provincial all-party committee about the future of policing in British Columbia and the need for a provincial police force. Because if we cannot get the police officer levels that we need in British Columbia, something's got to change. We're pushing the federal government hard on this because Nanaimo needs 100% policing. The policing that's funded needs police officers that are actually doing the work. But so do so many communities across the province. The vacancies are totally unacceptable. I'm going to pass it over to the Minister for Public Safety as well on this.
No, thank you, Mike. And as the Premier stated a moment ago, it is of critical concern to us. That's why back in late November, we made the funding announcement for the $230 million for 270 police officers to be primarily in small rural communities, but also the integrated teams, which are critical to being able to help deal with some of the challenges that communities such as Nanaimo face and ensuring that they've got the resources that they need here, as well as the smaller communities that often rely on the major centers to be able to do the work. We have also in the past put in place regional teams based in 4 communities in Kamloops, Kamloops, Kelowna, Prince George, and Terrace, where there were surge teams in place to deal with some of the challenges that the communities that you're referring to have been facing. But the bottom line is this: we need to get more police officers. It's an issue we continue to raise and push with the federal government for. We've seen the all-party committee in this province that came out with their unanimous recommendations around policing. At the same time, we've also seen the recent report out of the mass casualty shooting that took place in Nova Scotia, where one of the critical recommendations was a complete overhaul of how police are trained in this province. And what I want to see happen is those recommendations get the thorough attention that they deserve from the federal government.
Do you have a follow-up, Mike?
Yeah, sorry, maybe I wasn't clear with the focus of that one. How can these new hubs do work outside of those 12 cities? Like, what do you tell the mayor of Penticton or any of these other smaller cities that have a large number of repeat violent offenders that they can't help and can't protect the public? So how realistically, how can these hubs serve communities in neighboring jurisdictions? And I was just hoping the superintendent could unpack why information isn't shared properly right now, why this new special investigative target enforcement program, it's very kind of unclear as to why the information sharing between police agencies and Crown isn't good enough right now.
We've added 40 Crown Council across the province. They are going to be supporting regionally these issues. We know that the issues of repeat violent offenders and repeat chronic offenders is not unique to the 12 cities where these teams will be located. They'll be supporting prosecutors as they do, whether it's the prosecutors dedicated to hate crimes or the prosecutors dedicated to intimate partner violence or other specialty teams related to gangs. The prosecution teams that are established, these hub teams will be providing support to cities that don't have a dedicated hub team, so they shouldn't be seen in isolation. But they are definitely located in cities and communities where we feel special attention is needed, and Nanaimo is one of those. I'll turn it over to the Minister of Public Safety and then the Superintendent about that question in relation to the site funding.
Thank you. So the site funding is going to enable to have more in-depth investigations where police talking with prosecutors in terms of what kinds of situations they're finding with. They're able to target specific investigations regarding particular kinds of offenses that they're seeing around repeat violent offenders involving weapons, for example, and ensuring that a lot of those costs, which are often borne by local government, the province is there to assist with that, which will enable, I think, a more robust robust approach in terms of dealing with these kinds of cases that communities are finding themselves with.
Well, thank you for the question and the opportunity to clarify. Repeat offenders don't know political boundaries or municipal boundaries, and it takes a strong coordinated effort between not only the police agencies in those different communities, but also the prosecutors and the people that know those folks well, their support services and the people that deal with them. So the opportunity to work in an integrated fashion, in an integrated model for any justice system is optimal as people move from Nanaimo down island or up island or come into Nanaimo from other areas. So the hubs are a great opportunity to demonstrate what can be done. And with that demonstration, we can see how we mold the answer for the future. So I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for coming.